Ashram meetings. Today we have myself, Ilona, and William with us. William will be reading some of Babaji's verses, and he will tell us in detail what he will be reading. I'll hand it in to William.
Okay, hello, good evening from Holland. I'm reading in a book of Vijay Gupta. It's about Hirakan Baba. And in my years with the Himalayan mystic, Vijay was serving Babaji for a long time. So he was very direct present with Babaji. And he wrote down in all short stories about experiences and with Babaji. So, and we a few weeks ago we started on the first page, and now we are on chapter 11, page 25 only. And I will go on with reading. Chapter 11. Swamiji's father puts Babaji to test. Swamiji is Mahendra Baba, and his father tried to test Babaji if he was really Babaji. There were whispers in the temple that a devotee had been dispatched to Rajgarh to fetch Vishnudat Shastriji. I had been in Vrindavan for the past 2 days and didn't feel like going back home. I was really enjoying the atmosphere around me, meeting other devotees, listening to kirtans, receiving Babaji's darshan. I was in bliss. I would go to the temple around 5 in the morning. Babaji would come out of his room at around 9 in the morning, and a long queue of devotees would be waiting to see him. At around 10 that morning, an old man visit took everyone by surprise. Disciples of the late Mahendra Baba ran to welcome him. The old man was Swamiji's father. He was received with utmost respect and seated on the asan, a large cushion used for sitting. He asked Sri Lakshmi Narayanji and Chaitramani ji whether the sadhu at the temple was Hirkam Baba. They answered in the affirmative. A fragrance of flowers and incense sticks pervaded the temple. Chants of Om Namah Shivaya permeated the air as devotee patiently waited for Babaji to come out of his meditative state. They would turn ecstatic whenever his unique eyes rested on them and would feel as though all their desires had been fulfilled. Something was preying on the old man's mind. All of a sudden, he took out some black grams and threw them at Babaji. This outraged some devotees, but they kept silence, as he was Swamiji's father. One of them, however, dared to make a satirical comment. What are you doing? What do you think you'll achieve? There is a saying that tantrics are very irate by nature. Swamiji's father hailed from Darbhanga in Bihar, a state in eastern India. Tranta is an integral part of the lives of people from Bihar and neighboring states like Bengal and Assam. Responding to the interpret devotee, Mahendra Maharaj's father said, if you want to see the power of a single gram, then keep quiet and watch. If I throw 1 gram empowered by mantras on the road, that jeep coming from Baha's temple won't be able to cross this temple. And to demonstrate his point, he recited some mantras and threw a single gram in the general direction of the jeep. To our immense astonishment, the jeep screeched to a halt and couldn't cross the temple. It had developed some mechanical fault and broken down. There was a terrified silence. Swamiji's father smiled and said, if 1 gram has so much power, you can imagine the effect of the amount I threw at the sadhu. Had he been a common, the tact would have been over him, and he would have been under it. The person who has taken over my son's seat is a major sage. He is a great saint, and it is difficult to say anything else about him. Just then, Babaji's eyes flew open. The old man approached Babaji for his blessings and left the ashram with all due respect. Mahendra Baba meets his father.
I'm sorry, is this a good time to take a small break and ask if you can explain what just happened in this?
Yes. Maybe it's a little bit.
I can just share what I've understood, if that's okay, and you could
Yes,
maybe tell me.
yes, please.
Just that some important person's father has tried to assault Babaji with throwing a gram at them, but I'm not sure about everything else. And I was gonna ask, what is a gram? It's probably something specific.
I don't know especially what is black grams.
Mhm.
Black grams. He was Mahendra Baba was the one who made the ashram where Babaji is now in Vrindavan. And Mahendra already left his body, but his father was still there. So his father came from Bihar, and that's a state they say where they have some uh, tantric exercises or tantric doings. That means that they put with mantras. They yeah, I don't know exactly what is meant, but they put in grams. That's I think this is some little balls or something. I don't know, and then it gets power. It gets power to destroy. So he demonstrated it um, by putting 1 gram in the direction of a jeep, and then the jeep broke down. He said it will break down when I put that there. So it had he showed his power of this thing, and before that he threw a lot of these things in the direction of Babaji to test him. If he could survive this, then he would be a saint. If not, then there would be have some accident or something. So and he survived it easily, and so the father said that he is whoever is this is a great saint. He's a great saint. I don't know how great big, but he's a great saint.
Thank you. I understand now.
Okay, okay. So that is some yeah. Yeah, I don't know the English word. Some trickery. Some now chapter 12. 12. It's Mahendra Baba meets his father. Pandit Rangopal Sharma, a postmaster, devotee, and one of the trustees of the Vrindavan temple, told us about Sri Mahendra Maharaj's father. The story goes like this. Sri Mahendra Maharaj wanted to visit his native place in the year that he left his body. So this happened a few years before that, before the last story. Mahendra Maharaj asked Pundit Ranghopal Sharma to accompany him, and they set out for Durbanga by car. Once they reached his home, he bowed before the house, picked up some soil, and rubbed it on his brow. Only then did he call out for someone to open the door. A young fellow appeared and asked who they wished to meet. Swami asked for his father, referring to him by his given name. The young fellow informed them that the old gentleman was not at home, but added, "He'll be back soon." The lad then asked Swamiji for his name, to which Swamiji replied, "I disclose my name to the gentleman I wish to meet when he arrives." Bowing before his house once again, Swamiji paid obeisance to the soil of his native place and returned to the car. He asked Sharmaji to start the car and drive back. Sri Mahendra Maharaj was peaceful by nature. People knew him as Brahmachari Baba, a sage who has taken the vow of celibacy. Continuing with the tale, Sharmaji told us, "We had traveled about 40 kilometers when I thought Mahendra Baba came home and did not even meet his father. I wondered why. Even though I was curious, I found myself unable to say anything. Finally, I could not help myself and mustered up the courage to ask, 'Prabhu, you came home and did not even meet your father. Why?' But Mahendra Maharaj just smiled. Sharmaji reminiscence, sorry, the ambassador car was moving. I was lost in thought when suddenly, after 2 hours of driving, the car stopped at Swamiji's house. Pandit Rangopal Sharma was astonished. How had this happened? Mahendra Baba got out of the car and Swamiji Sharmaji followed him. An old man came to them and Swamiji touched his feet. Sharmaji followed suit. The old gentleman invited them inside and offered them refreshments. Only then did he ask, "How are you, Mahendra?" and demanded to know why Swamiji had not told the young lad his name and why had he left without meeting him. Swamiji's father then described how he had managed to get the visitors back to his door. "I used my tantric powers and said, 'Let those who were here come back.'" Sharmaji told us he felt blessed as in the old man's presence, and his curiosity evaporated. This then is the background of Swamiji's father and should help readers understand what a great tantric he was. I was impressed that even a tantric like him had touched Babaji's feet. He just went to prove that Babaji was God indeed. He just went to prove that Babaji was God indeed. Also a little bit strange story. You understand?
Uh, yeah, I think the master who has left the body, He came to visit a few years before the previous chapter,
Yes.
um, his father, but he came into the body, but he didn't even visit his father. And somebody was curious why he didn't visit his father. And they went by car, and the car broke, and somebody went. The Babaji was in the car, and somebody went to kiss Babaji's feet.
No, yeah, it was like this that Mahendra went to his father's home, and he arrived at his home, but he didn't disclose his name, so he asked the servant or whoever was there if his father was there, and he said no, he's not there. He's there, not there. He will come back soon. And then Mahendra Baba left again without saying anything, and the one who was with him was asking himself why he didn't visit his father. He just go back again, and it's 40 kilometers more. And then suddenly he didn't know why and how. They were again standing for the house, and then his father came out. So and his father told the people, well, the boy who had received Mahendra Baba, he didn't know the name. He told him there was somebody for you. Then he said, okay, if there is somebody for me, let him come back with his mind powers. Let him come back. So he came back. And the writer of the book is saying, so that's a proof how strong these tantric practices are, and that even these people uh, bow down for Babaji, recognize Babaji.
Ah, okay.
This was about the story.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And now another test, chapter 13, Babaji. Yeah, sometimes my English is not the best, but okay.
It's perfect. It's a lot of characters I don't know yet, so I'm looking forward to knowing. Like the, I don't even attempt to pronounce it. Mahavatarchi.
Avatar,
Mm-hmm.
Babaji.
Mm-hmm.
But that is not that is more the Indian name. And I mean the English. Some words I'm not so. But okay, Babaji, chapter 13. Babaji passes another test. My family had also arrived at Vrindavan to meet Babaji. Babaji was in Vrindavan. And my elder brother, who liked singing bhajans, regulated several I don't know this, several to the accompaniment of a harmonium. Acharya Vishnudat Shastraji came from Rajgarh the next day, and all eyes were on him. What would he tell us about Babaji? Shastraji was the priest of Babaji. Yeah? He was Babaji. He became the priest of Babaji. Babaji was in deep meditation, and Shastraji went and sat in a corner after bowing before him. Babaji used to meditate several hours a day at that time. That day, he opened his eyes at around 11 in the morning and called Ramesh Sharma, a devotee from Lovan, and whispered something in his ears. Ramesh went to Shastraji and passed on the message. Shastraji rose and followed Ramesh. As they drew closer to him, Babaji quickly got up and went into the room that Mahendra Baba had built adjacent to the idol. Shastraji followed him in. Babaji sat on his asam and told Shastraji to shut the door. He complied, and they were in the room for quite a while. Just as we were beginning to wonder how long it would take, Shastraji came out and announced, as the Acharya of the Hirikandi society, I hereby declare that this sadhu is a true reincarnation of Shiva and the Hirakanwala Baba. We should have no doubt about this. You are aware that before leaving his body, Mahendra Baba had called us all to Vrindavan and asked us how we would recognize Babaji when he arrived, since he would not be there to identify him. For this purpose, he disclosed a mantra to me secretly and told me that it was the key to recognizing the true reincarnation. He said, if one day someone comes to this temple and claims he is Hirakan Baba, he will recite the mantra to you thrice without being asked for it. And you mustn't have any doubt about the sadhu after that, because he will be the true Hirakan Baba. Today, Babaji recited the mantra to me thrice of his own accord and asked me if I still had any doubts. I told him that he had removed them all. Shastraji's words dispelled all the remaining reservations that had lingered among devotees about Babaji, being the reincarnated Lord Hirakan. Everyone was happy and relieved. My brother gave me permission to return home, but by this time I was reluctant to leave. I told him that I would go back to Bharatpur after 2 days. Later that evening, I found out that Babaji would be leaving for Gwalior in 5 days. Chapter 14. Babaji and the recalcitrant priest. Recalcitrant priest. The next day, a strange thing happened. There was a theft in the temple. Babaji had been at Vrindavan for barely 6 days. A devotee from Mumbai had gifted a gold pendant weighing 30 grams to the temple to be placed on Babaji's idol, and it had gone missing. Even after such search and inquiry, no clues turned up. Suspicion soon fell on the temple priest who had been appointed by the late Mahendra Maharaj several years ago. The priest had been well looked after in 20 years that he had served the temple. He had been given a house adjacent to the temple to ease his burdens. His son Gopal's education and wedding had both been funded at the temple expense. And if this were not enough, a Dharamsala, rest house for pilgrims, had been constructed and named Gopal Bhavan after the said offspring to provide the priest with an additional income. When the pendant disappeared, the priest claimed that he knew nothing about it, but nobody believed him. Whispers grew, and word of the incident reached Babaji's ears. He called Lakshmi Narayanji, president of the Vrindavan Temple Trust, and asked him what had happened. Lakshmi Narayanji nervously brought Babaji up to date with all that had taken place. Babaji told him to call the priest. The priest was sitting outside the temple door when Lakshmi Narayanji went to him. The priest immediately got up on his high horse and refused to heed the summons. Tell Babaji that I cannot come right now. Lakshmi Narayanji was torn. On the one hand, he was bound by Babaji's orders, and on the other hand, he was facing the priest who had been chosen by Mahendra Maharaji. He didn't know what to do. Just then, a devotee arrived and told him, Babaji is calling you. He went in a dismal frame of mind and told Babaji what the priest had said. He was told to go back and repeat the summons. Lakshmi Narayanji returned to the priest and repeated Babaji's message. Intransigent, the priest said angrily, I have already said I will not come. Lakshmi Narayanji returned and relayed the priest's words. Babaji was furious. His eyes turned red. He folded his hands into a fist, twisted it thrice, and said, Priest, come here. Almost immediately the priest appeared before Babaji, huffing and puffing because he had sprinted all the way. Yes, Babaji, he said. Babaji questioned him about the pendant. The priest denied all knowledge of it. Babaji repeated the question. Once again, the priest claimed ignorance. Babaji finally said, Listen, you must leave the premises before the sun before the sun sets. He told Lakshmi Narayanji to let the priest take whatever valuables he wanted from the temple. Do not stop him, as he has worshipped the idol of Hirakambaba. He vowed in the name of Goddess Lakshmi that he would not drink water until the priest left the premises. With these words, he shut the door of his room and bolted it. The priest took Babaji at his word. He not only loaded his own belongings, but also a number of valuables that belonged to the temple. In three tempos, and he took also a number of valuables that belonged to the temple in three tempos and forsook Vrindavan for the rest of his life. The entire operation took place in a space of 3 hours, and we all stood by silently and watched him leave. I later learned that he had gone back to his village, Lohan, which was just 8 kilometers away. As around 5 in the morning, Lakshmi Narayanji and some other devotees went to Babaji with some bhog, food offered to deities, and water. Babaji opened the door and asked Lakshmi Narayanji, Did you try to stop him from taking anything? Lakshmi Narayanji said, No, Prabhu. He took whatever he wanted. Babaji smiled. Why are you so anxious? Everything will be all right now. After the priest left, I overheard Lakshmi Narayanji saying, It's so hard to kick out a bad tenant these days, even if they've only been in occupation for just 2 years. Yet Babaji managed to get rid of this priest who was here for 20 years in just 4 hours. Okay,
So, do you think the priest has stolen the pendant?
I think, yes.
Mhm.
I think Babaji recognized it and he sent him away and he could take whatever he wanted. I
Mm.
think otherwise, and he didn't want to meet Babaji, so
Mm-hmm.
something is not right. Oh, now it's a long. Oh, now it's a long story. Shall we do it?
Yeah, if you feel like it.
Okay. This chapter 15, Babaji at Bharatpur. Vijay, the writer of the book, he came back to Bharatpur. My brother told me that Babaji would be coming for a 3-day stay before going on to Bandikai. His itinerary was from the mountains to Vrindavan, then on to Gwalior, Bharatpur, and Bandikui. Kuti. Babaji had been in Gwalior at Lakshmi Narayanji place for the past 7 days. Everyone started preparing for his arrival. Rations were stored and arranged, made for his stay and for the accommodation of his devotees. The list of no-do items was endless. No, sorry, the list of to-do items was endless. A big bus with lights and a special rooftop asan had been arranged for his entry into town. The asan is a seat. My brother wanted a procession to escort Babaji to our house. A band was at the ready, along with a group of kirtan singers. My brother left for Gwalior to pick up Babaji, even as our house was being decorated like a bride for him. Babaji reached Bharatpur by the evening train. My family, some close friends, and devotees from near and far all gathered at the platform to receive him with flowers and garlands. The train inched into the platform and jubilations broke out. My brother waved from the first class compartment, signaling us to come forward in an orderly fashion. With the kind of enthusiasm that had been building up, it was handily surprising when a stampede broke out and everyone surged forward to welcome Lord Hirakan. As he got off the train, he was swamped by the rolling crowd. What small feet he had, and they were bare. We went to him one by one and literally inundated him with garlands. The entire station echoed with voices yelling, Boli Baba Ki Jai. Passengers by stopped in their tracks to gaze at his magnetic face. Someone exclaimed, Look, how beautiful he is. He looks like a young boy. A bus was standing outside the station for Babaji's devotees. We escorted Babaji and a few of his close companions to a car. Outside our house, there was another bus, the one with the special rooftop asan and the lights. It was about 7:30 p.m. by now, and the top of the bus had been lit up. Two bands in front of it were playing spiritual tunes. J-cars, accumulations and cheers were raised on the mic. Babaji went into our house briefly and then came out. Perhaps he had wanted to quench his thirst. We later found out that he did not even drink water in front of anyone. He seemed very young and innocent and readily agreed to do whatever his devotees requested. On this occasion, he was asked to grace the procession, which was to go through all the main routes of the city and culminate at our house. Babaji was helped up on the top of his bus via a ladder at its rear end. Some devotees also sat on the roof with him. The band struck a new note and marched forward. The bus inched ahead slowly, accompanied by cavalcade of devotees. Cavalcade of sounds of Boli Baba Ki Jai resounded. A few followers sang bhajans as they walked with the bus. The procession was through all the main roads and finally returned to our house. We were home at last. Babaji came down from the bus and took him to the room, and we took him to the room we had prepared for him. There was a dharamshala nearby where food and lodging had been arranged for all the devotees. It was around 9 p.m. by now. My brother went to Babaji with some prasad, only to discover that he did not eat a grain. His diet consisted of milk at night, curd and buttermilk in the morning, and a couple of slices of any fruit or orange juice in the afternoon. He would neither eat nor drink water in front of everyone. Food had to be placed in his mouth lovingly. This is what my brother told us. His daily itinerary was equally fascinating. He would go to bed at 10 p.m. and wake up at 4 a.m. There was a proper bathing process for Babaji, which involved filling buckets separately with water, milk, and curd. They were then mixed with Ganga Jal, holy water from the Ganges. They were then mixed with Ganga Jal, it is holy water from the Ganges. At 5 in the morning, he would apply chandan on his forehead and then on the brows of his devotees. By 10 p.m., he would retire to his room and shut the door. My brother began to make preparations for his bath the previous night itself. It was as if his sleep had vanished. He cleaned the bathroom and filled 4 or 5 buckets with water. Milk was poured into one bucket early in the next morning. Curd was put into another pail, and Ganga Jal was mixed into the water. By 3 a.m., my brother was ready for Babaji's morning ablutions. The rest of the family was also on standby. We were to discover shortly that during his bath, Babaji would sit on a chowki, a short wooden platform with legs, and devotees would pour water over him and take care of the nitty gritty of his bath. just as they would for any idol of Lord Shiva. Babaji's door opened at 4 a.m. Some devotees went with my brother into his room. Babaji came out in a kurta and headed straight for his bath. Doesn't he go to the toilet? I asked. A devotee satisfied my curiosity and told me that he did not, because he was the Lord himself. No one had ever seen him going to the washroom. Babaji sat on the chowk after devotees had helped him out of his kurta, and they began pouring water over his body. Some poured it over his torso, others at his feet. Then milk and curd were massaged on his head and into the tangled locks of his hair. This done, my brother called the family and some disciples who were with us to join in pouring water over him. One by one, we all poured water on him while Babaji kept sat there like a statue. His body was completely still. He was like offering water to a sheaf. It was like offering water to a sheaf link. Once the bath was over. My brother wiped the water off with a towel. The door of the bathroom opened, and he came out with my brother wearing a kurta with an ondi slung over his shoulders. Mr. Lalji, one of Babaji's devotees, had already prepared the chandan. This he applied on his forehead head before doing the same for all of us. Thereafter, Babaji went back to his room to meditate. We learned that he would emerge from his meditation at 8 a.m. to begin the yajna, the fire ceremony. The sacrificial fire pit, called the Havankund, had been dug in the courtyard and preparations for the yajna began. Everything that would be needed had been pre-arranged. Devotees had told us that Babaji used milk and water in the yajna as offerings. He came out of his room and sat on the asam that had been placed for him near the Havankund. The yajna commenced. He chanted mantras and made offerings of ghee and water. My brother and some devotees also followed suit. He completed the whole ritual in about half an hour, and then the kirtan began. Thereafter he sat in the veranda on an asam, and devotees went to him to place flowers and bel patra, commonly offered to Lord Shiva, they put it at his feet. They also showered some on his head. After giving darshan for an hour, Babaji retired to his room. I think my brother had taken him to offer him some bowl of milk and prasad. The kirtans carried on. I had been anxiously on the lookout for Chandramani, hoping to hear some more stories from him, and felt extremely disappointed when I discovered that he had not come to Bharatpur. Some devotees told me that being a mountain man, he had halted at the thought of dealing with the scorching heat of Rajasthan and had returned to Hirakan with Babaji's permission. Babaji emerged from his room half an hour later. The soothing sound of kirtan flowed across the courtyard, creating a sense of harmony. The atmosphere was wonderful. It felt as if it was a wedding in our house. Around noon, the prasad that had been prepared for the devotees was offered to Babaji on a plate. He blessed it with his gaze, drishtibo, and sent it back to be mixed with the rest of the prasad. It was there distributed to all devotees. A short while later, Babaji went back to his room to rest. At 4 in the evening, Babaji was back on his asam. Devotees started approaching him for solutions to their various problems. The kirtan was still underway. One old lady told him that she couldn't see anything. He asked a devotee standing close to him to get some vibhuti. Vibhuti is sacred ash, made of burnt, dried wood and offerings from the Havankund. After it arrived in a bowl, he put some in her eyes. She started screaming. One disciple ran to her and helped her to sit down close by close by. After that, another person also complained of some pain in his eye. The process was repeated. Several people went to Babaji to have him put a pinch of vibhuti in their eyes as well. I noticed that he had covered his mouth with his handi and was quietly laughing while they wept. Just then, my older brother came and took me to him. Babaji, this is my younger brother, Vijay, he said. Babaji smiled. He held my hand and put some vibhuti in my eyes too. I mounted as my eyes started hunting and it made me furious. After some 15 odd minutes, I rinsed them and they finally start to open. They finally started to open. I felt a new kind of energy in them. Shortly afterwards, the blind old woman announced that her eyesight had returned. It was a miracle. Babaji had put a little bit of vibhuti and bestowed vision on a pair of eyes that had no sight in them. Everyone started swapping notes and exchanging stories about their experiences. His first day at Bharatpur ended with bhajans and kirtans. His second day too flew by in an atmosphere of intense spirituality. Babaji was sitting on his asam. Sorry, it was around noon. I went to pay my respects. He grabbed my hand and put some vibhuti in my eyes again. I felt a stirring pain and was livid I had no because I had not gone to Babaji to repeat the experience, and I had no eye problems. However, there wasn't much I could do in the circumstances. My eyes were still smarting, so walking away was not in an opinion. Yielding to my fire, I gingerly sat beside his asam. A few minutes later, I felt a brightness behind me. Sorry. A few minutes later, I felt a brightness behind my closed lids, and the luminescence kept expanding. I felt as if the sun was coming out and destroying the darkness. The light was round in shape, and I could see Babaji in it, with a snake and a ceremonial umbrella over his head. I screamed. Babaji immediately parted me thrice and uttered Om Shanti, Om Shanti, Om Shanti, and the light vanished. I slowly opened my eyes, and at the moment it truly dawned on me that that he was the Maha Avatar Babaji who had reincarnated for the good of the people. Full of fear, my eyes opened completely. I looked at him, and being prescient, he knew that I wanted to tell him everything I had seen. He put a finger on his lips and forbade me from uttering a word. I said nothing. I was in no condition to be garrulous, but I felt both blessed and humbled. I was overwhelmed at the thought of having been bestowed with a singular an honor by Babaji. With so singular an honor by Babaji, just then the Bog arrived. He blessed it with his gaze and left for his room. Devotees were busy eating prasad. I still could not decide whether I should mention what had happened with me earlier to anyone. The evening came. Like every other day, after his bath, Babaji applied chandan on everyone. The kirtan went on, new devotees kept coming, and as long as Babaji remained in the veranda, none of them showed any sign of moving. His attraction was mesmeric, like a magnet pulling pieces of iron towards it. That night, when I went to bed, I kept remembering how he had smiled at me whenever his gaze had met mine. It was Babaji's third day in Bharatpur. A photographer had covered his entire stay. That day, he showed him all the photographs and articles which had been published about him in various newspapers. Babaji was to leave for Bandikui at the evening. The devotees who would be taking him there had already arrived. There was a sense of sadness in the house, almost as if a bride was about to leave her home forever. My brother broke down while singing bhajans. Shastriji told me that watching Babaji's farewell was extremely painful. Babaji had reincarnated to spread contentment on every inch of this earth, yet his departure always brought grief. The atmosphere at home was full of sorrow. Something infinitely precious to us was about to go away, and we would be left behind. The thought was unbearable. His train was to depart at 6 p.m. Outstation devotees started preparing to leave. All of us stood with garlands for his send off. The car, which was to take him to the station, was standing outside, loaded with flowers. He came out of his room and everyone wept. My own tears would not stop flowing. No one wanted him to leave. We all wanted him to stay on. Some devotees lay in front of the car. Things were becoming that serious. There were sounds of weeping everywhere. Babaji was absolutely calm. What kind of avatar was this? He had no attachments to anyone. He was here today, there tomorrow. Everyone was attached to him, and yet he was detached. This then was the true nature of God. He was above all worldly ties. Babaji sat in the car. The wailing and screaming grew louder. That was when the true picture of love unfolded before me, and I thought this was how Lord Krishna's departure from Gokul to Mathura must have been, when the gopis had wept copiously, unable to endure the thought of their approaching separation from him. Some had even given up their lives. This happens to devotees in every incarnation of God, who wants to be left behind by him. Yet in every incarnation they fall prey to his obduracy and sacrifice. It happened to goddess Sati in the days when Lord Ram was separated from his beloved wife, Ma Sita, when she was abducted by the demon Ravan. Almost mad with grief, he wandered with his brother Lakshman though through the Dhaka forest, seeking her in every nook and cranny, asking every leaf, flower, and animal if they had been seen her. Lord Shiva and his wife, Goddess Sati, were on their way back to Kailas after meeting the sage Agastya. When Lord Shiva saw Ram roaming in the forest, lamenting the loss of his wife, he bowed to him. Goddess Sati could not understand why Lord Shiva was paying obeisance to an earthly king. Shiva explained that Rama was actually the avatar of Lord Vishnu. Goddess Sati did not believe him and asked how this was possible when the king was weeping like a child over the loss of his wife. Lord Shiva replied that he was merely displaying the qualities of a human, as he was supposed to. Unconvinced, Sati decided to test Lord Ram. Her husband tried to dissuade her but failed. She appeared before Lord Ram in the guise of Ma Sita. Lord Ram immediately recognized her and asked her what she was doing in the forest alone. Where is Lord Shiva? He asked. Ashamed, Sati returned to her original form, but she was still not convinced. Sensing this, Lord Rama appeared to her in his divine form along with Ma Sita. Her doubts gone, she bowed to him and returned to Lord Shiva. However, knowing that she had appeared before Lord Ram in the guise of Ma Sita, Lord Shiva cast her off, saying that he could no longer accept her as his wife because he regarded Ma Sita as his mother. This story had two morals. One, that despite being Lord Shiva's spouse, Goddess Sati had lacked faith in him. Second, Lord Shiva's immense sacrifice. He left Mahasati on the strength of one solitary incident. Lord Hirakan had no attachment, because he was Lord Shiva in the flesh. How could anyone ensonate him in the superficial web of infanti- sorry, infatuations and illusions, Mahamaya? The train drew into the station. The whole place resounded with jaykas chanted by devotees. Passengers peeped out of their compartments and felt blessed when they saw Babaji. He got into the train, and my brother went with him. And what of the rest of us, the ones who stayed behind? We did what devotees have done through the ages. We went home with a heavy heart and wept. Bali Baba Ki Jai. Dit was a long story. So, how you felt?
Thank you for sharing. I have loads of questions.
Oh.
Yeah. Um, well, first of all, I want to say I was shocked by some information like that.
Mhm.
Might seem funny that Babaji didn't go toilet at all.
Yeah, yes, yes.
But it makes sense if he was a god. I don't know if Jesus ever went toilet, so would make sense because they're from heaven, but they so incarnate in physical, so they can communicate with us. And I thought that that makes sense. So also made me realize how important the bath is because he was
Hmm.
putting only the best stuff on his skin. Um, and I was so shocked that he wouldn't drink water in front of people, and it makes me wonder why. And it said because it has to be with love.
Oh, yes, that people had to feed him with love. They put something, maybe some fruits or so in his mouth
Uh-huh.
with love. That's happened. That's an old Indian habit.
Ah.
Even if, yeah, they put even the feed the mother, the father, they can feed each other.
Feed with a spoon or with
Yeah,
hands.
whatever, or with the hands.
Really adorable. And
I once was in one lady from Nepal, and on her birthday, she wanted everybody puts a piece of cake in her mouth, lovingly.
oh, and I just yes, so also impressed by the fact he had a good routine.
Yes,
A good routine. It proves something that it's so important.
yeah, he has a very good routine of rest, meditation, and some time for the people. And
Hmm. And this incarnation was in 1980s.
this was in the what the chapters I read are now in the beginning of the 70s.
1970s.
From the 1970 to the first 3 4 years, I think it's these chapters. Later on, it will be later, I think. But
Hmm. So because there were trains already.
there were already trains. Yes, trains are already long time.
So Babaji was incarnated, and just can't gather in my mind how this wasn't made famous worldwide, how this information hasn't been spread in the 70s. That
Well, it spread, but yeah, they say of Shiva he is incarnated on earth, but he's more on the background. He's not like a king who's known by everybody.
Mhm. Okay, because if anyone found out about this, maybe somehow he managed to keep it private. But if, because the wonders he conducted they were near to what Jesus was doing, and I'm wondering how it didn't reach the news or in
Well, it was in some newspapers, but it didn't spread so quickly. I don't know. That is
maybe people they didn't believe it.
that they didn't believe it, or they. was not their main interest. I don't know.
Mm.
And even in the end of the 70s and early of the 80s, he got known also in the West. So many people from the West went there, and some by dreams, some by just word of mouth from others.
Mm.
Uh, yeah, I didn't hear of him before the end of the 80s. So
Okay, that's interesting. So, you said you read that his reason of coming at that time was to spread content
yes.
about him, and I'm wondering if he was to come back, would be his reason.
Well, it's one main reason also for him being here. It is said that to help his devotees, of to help the world through a difficult time, to times of transformation. So, and this seemed to be a time which is a time of transformation, with the people should live more simple and yeah, more less complicated lives and be more from the heart. So it's a time of transformation. So it's they should shed off jealousy and lust and all these things which bring confusion and which brings discord between people.
Hmm.
Because yes,
Thank you for sharing all of this. It makes me think Babaji was only eating out of courtesy to humans around him.
yes. Sometimes I think also like that.
Yeah.
yes.
So this quite a lot of information to process. For me personally, yeah, very, very, very interesting to hear. And thank you for sharing.
Okay. Fine. Nice.
Unless anyone has any questions, maybe we can continue next week.
Yes, we can continue next week.
Thank you so, so much for reading. You've done such an amazing job. I'm very grateful, William. See
Okay. Thank you.
you next week.
Next week.
Om Namah Shivaya.
Om Namah Shivaya.